Hey, what's up, everyone? BDF44 here, coming at you with another video. All right, so Kawhi Leonard has re-signed with the LA Clippers for $176.3 million 4-year deal. Uh, well, to be honest with you, I think it's one of those situations, as I said, they had to try to take their time with this particular deal because Kawhi is a free agent, but he's a free agent going into the season knowing that he's not going to play it all this year. So you don't want to find yourself paying an absorbent amount to somebody that you're not really sure about as far as what his status is going to be and all of that. So I figured this would be probably the deal that would take the longest. Just off top, I figured that. In my mind, it seemed to me that the Clippers would have to try to find a way to be satisfied with paying him this season. It's not about the seasons in the future. It's about how do you put a price tag on basically a season where he's not playing? So, that's how I looked at it. But overall, they got it done. 176.3, I believe I said. It's great money for Kwahi. I mean, it's a great contract, to be honest with you. I understand that you have to wonder about his health at all times. But considering that this is probably somebody who's going to get the tip-top max, it looks like he left some money on the board, to be completely honest with you. It looks that way. And that's a good thing because the Clippers need some flexibility. At this point, they don't really have it. You got Paul George, and you've given away all of your picks to acquire him, plus his max contract. You got Kwahi Leonard now, and that's pretty much the basis of your salary. Then everybody else just kind of fills in after that. And you just know for a fact that Terrence Mann, I always mention this kid, but he's somebody that you just know for a fact you're going to have to pay. He is someone you're going to pay. I don't know how much he's going to cost, but I look at him like I look at THT. You don't play around there. You don't let him get to a point where he hits free agency and has a chance to walk away from you. That's what I'm saying. You want to extend him as soon as possible. That's my opinion. I saw enough from Terrence Mann to know that he should be a mainstay with the LA Clippers for 10 years. So, yeah. As far as everything else is concerned with the Clippers, more than anything, I haven't seen them make a whole lot of moves this offseason. I think this year they're going to be competitive, but I do think this is somewhat of a wash season. It is. Without Kawhi Leonard set to suit up at all, they kind of just got a free year. No pressure. They're not in the championship hunt this year. I still think they have a chance to be a play-in team, but this is kind of a wash year. Smart money for the Clippers doesn't try too hard this year, and this is my philosophy with all teams that are in this kind of situation. So this is not unique to any other situation as far as I'm concerned. This is my opinion almost every time. Teams should look to be competitive, but since one of their stars is out, see this is a free year to go ahead and get themselves a lottery pick. I know NBA players will never go along with that. You want to win, and I know that the NBA has made it so that there's a lot more parity between the bottom three teams in terms of their probability for getting the first pick in the draft. So you don't have to just do Philadelphia style and just tank to the floor and not even try, trot out players that you don't even believe in so that you can lose as much as possible. You don't have to do that. You could be competitive. But I think the Clippers, when it really comes down to it, they should be strategic about trying to get themselves a lottery pick this season. It's a free year to get a pick because you don't have any. So going out there trotting out a valiant Paul George year and you make the playoffs and you get bounced in the first round, that does nothing for your franchise. You need flexibility, and you're not going to find it anywhere. So missing the playoffs this year, assuring yourself an opportunity to get a lottery pick, a natural-born lottery pick if there's at all possible, because they did trade it away, didn't they? Never mind. They traded that away. That's how that works. When you that all goes to Thunder. Never mind. Well, it's a wash season regardless. Scratch everything I said about them and their pick, because obviously that's been traded away. So even if they were to do horribly, they don't have their own pick. That probably is somewhere else, likely the Thunder. So this is why I hate, like me personally, as a person who thinks like a GM to a degree, this is why I don't like moves like what they made for Paul George. Because you leave yourself zero flexibility in the event of something like this. Now, this would otherwise be the greatest opportunity for the Clippers to at least have their very own pick this coming season, so that in this event they could, not win and feel good about it. But now it's like, nah, you can't even do that. So as I redirect my thinking to the reality of the situation, maybe they should go all in trying to get a player early, get that third superstar early, because you really aren't playing for anything. You really aren't playing for anything, and you don't have a whole lot to trade to get that superstar anyway. The Clippers are in a bad situation. What do you want to do, man? What do you want me to do? The more I think about it, everywhere you turn to try to find flexibility in regards to the Clippers situation, there's a door there. There's a big brick wall in the way. They don't have a pick. They don't have trade pieces to get anybody big other than trading a bunch of okay players to accumulate enough value to grab you a guy like Pascal Siakam. They could probably do that. You know what I mean? That would be good. And then they have Pascal, Kwahi, Paul George, Terrence Mann going into next year, which is a playoff team for sure. Kawhi Leonard can get the most out of that. Paul George can do some good things there. Was that year 4 for Terrence? I like that idea. That gives you something to look forward to for next season. So, hey, as I break down the Clippers situation, that's pretty much the best thing they got going on for themselves, is the ability to possibly trade a bunch of small pieces for a guy like Pascal Siakam. That's it. That's what they got. Or they can just trot out there with what they got, and scratch this season off and hope to God everybody stays healthy going into next season. I mean, that's literally all they got going on. So that's what you signed up for, Kawhi. It's on you and Paul George to come together and find a way to get a victory out of the situation, get a championship in this 4-year span, without really any flexibility. That's it. And to be honest with you, as calculated as someone as Kawhi is, seeing as how he played everybody last summer, I'm actually surprised he allowed himself to fall into this circumstance, because this is hopeless. Like, cut and dry. And it brings me great Laker pleasure to say that the Clipper situation is hopeless. But it looks hopeless to me for at least a year or two. At least 2 years. 2 of these years is a wash. Straight up. It's just going to be honest. There's no flexibility in sight. When you trade away everything for Paul George, you're essentially saying Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, no matter what the field looks like, no matter what teams or super teams come together, this is what you're banking on. And quite honestly, it's not good enough. Never was. I said it from the beginning. That's not good enough. Kawhi Leonard is fantastic, but you need to give him a real team with real players around him. Paul George is a great player, but he's not a overly great player. And so it's not like you're putting together AD and Bron and banking on life that way. You're banking on an A1 star and a B+ star, I guess. Sorry, Clipper fans. There's nothing good to say about the situation other than you don't suck. Your team does not suck. Terrence Mann is a young player that can give you all kinds of future. But until y'all do something to acquire some flexibility, whether it come in the form of picks or you doing something to get rid of Paul George's contract or Kawhi Leonard's for what you just signed, you're just kind of going to be as good as they pull you together to be. Best case scenario, you guys keep finding gems in the draft that can booster your talent, booster your team to put you all over the hump. That's what it becomes, a scouting game at that point. You know what I mean? And I don't want my team in this situation. I don't want any team, unless they got the best of the best stars, to find themselves in a situation this tight, flex-wise. It's just flexibility-wise. It's not something that provides a whole lot of wiggle room for success, and you have no room for injuries. None. No room for injuries when something like this happens. The reason why my mind went immediately to they should just tank, more or less, was because I remember San Antonio having this exact same thing happen when I was a kid. They had David Robinson go down, and their team went from being one of the best teams in the Western Conference with the chance to maybe get to the finals. Like, they were really, really good that year. Immediately to him being out for the season and them being in a position to where they can't really see hope for their season. Like, it became a situation where it was very clear that because he was out, they had no chance. So what they did is they tanked. They tanked to the ground. They lost every game they could, right? Because they figured they got a free season. They know they got their Hall of Famer coming back next year. They tanked to the ground. And do you know who they drafted with the first pick in the draft when they won the lottery for doing so? Tim Duncan. That's what they did. They got Tim Duncan out of that situation. And for those youngsters who don't know how great Tim Duncan was, he was the other guy. It was Kobe and Tim. Those were the two best players in the league during their era. Let a lot of people tell you Shaq. Let a lot of people tell you Allen Iverson. I respect those names, but it was Tim Duncan. It was Kobe Bryant. Those were the guys before LeBron got here. Those were the two guys. That was your NBA cream of the crop. That's how they got them. They were a good team that year, y'all. Just their superstar went down. That's it. Just like Clippers situation, their superstar went down. But they didn't have a situation where they had, lost their picks or anything. They had all their picks in hand. So all they had to do was lose. And they inherited the greatest player they ever had coming to their franchise. In the history of their whole franchise. That's why you don't do what the Clippers did. That's why you don't do that. But they were in between a rock and a hard place because they were trying to compete with the Lakers. Kawhi Leonard said he wanted to come here, dick over the Lakers. Excuse my language. It is what it is. And the only way he was going to be able to carry that out was if they were willing to mortgage their entire future to get his number 2 guy, who probably should have been a number 3 guy. And they acquiesced because of the Clippers. And there was no other path to relevancy up until that point. They had a very, very good team. Very good. That team was solid. They had all kinds of guys on that team. But they needed the superstars, or so they thought, to bring them over the top. But I would argue this. That team before Kwahi and PG, that team has played better than the team that Kwahi and PG have been on. That team with Trez and all those guys that was running amok. That team has been more cohesive. They were better defensively. They had more heart. This was before they got their stars. This is back when they had all that flexibility. But when you acquiesce to what a superstar wants, who ain't a part of your organization yet, but you want him so bad because you just want to, keep in the game with the Lakers, you back yourself into a corner that ultimately sabotages your entire future. That is what they did. That's what they did. Trying to keep up with us. Trying to screw us over because they knew Kwahi had it in his mind to screw us over, Paul George too. But what happens when you do things out of spite? What do we learn here, kids? When you do things for the wrong reasons, the wrong consequences come because of it. This is what the Clippers have taught us here. They put this team together out of spite. They went through back channels trying to screw over the Lakers. Kawhi Leonard had his back pocket all in trying to make sure that he was devious to our franchise, making us think that there was a chance we can get him, so we would wait on him while the rest of free agency would dry up because he knew he wasn't going to be a Laker. If anything, he knew we were going to be the enemy. So he wanted to make sure we didn't get any players. Remember that? I remember that. We won a championship that year. I don't know what else to say, y'all. Congratulations to Kawhi Leonard and his family. It's a fantastic contract. Hope he gets back well, healthy, you know what I mean? This ain't personal. I'm a fan, but I also know there's business and then there's human beings, and you're happy to see somebody succeed, especially somebody that has ties out here. I'm an LA dude. It's good to see somebody from a family from out here continue to get wealthy. It's a good thing. But make no mistake about it. He ain't winning no kind of championship unless he leads them there with whatever it is that he and Paul George can put together. If I'm him, I'm going to Steve Ballmer. With all due respect, because this ain't no dulo. This ain't me saying you're supposed to be devious to somebody else. But I'm going to Steve Ballmer. I'm saying, listen, I've signed on with you. I wanted to play with Paul George. Paul George's my guy. But the only flexibility possibilities we have is if we trade that man. The only way we have any path, I mean any path, to a championship while I'm here is if we find flexibility in his stead. It has nothing to do with what Paul George can bring to your table. It's about his price tag. And it's about your flexibility or lack thereof without picks. You need to trade him for picks. Just like you traded away picks to get him, you need to trade away. You got to undo that. And I know you ain't going to be able to get half the picks you gave away to get him. But you need something. And you need that cap space in order to put the right pieces around Kwahi that can actually help him win. Because right now, you don't have that. We ain't going to even lie about it. You don't have that. So that's what I got to say, man. Hey, look. It is what it is. I'm a Clipper hater for life. So I'm not going to act like I ain't. I'm a Laker fan. And I took a lot of what happened during the previous era pretty personally. But I could step outside of that to a certain degree and see the goodness in certain things. Players do, teams do, and things like that. And overall, just like I always say, the Clippers are just another organization from which professional athletes can display their talent and live out their dreams. So I want it to function properly, just like I want every other franchise to function properly, so that we can get the most out of these teams, these players rather, in the limited time that they have to be athletes before they have to retire. As these franchises continue to go on and replace them with new bodies that will make just as much money, if not more. So that's where I come from at all times. At the end of the day, I want these teams to be flexible, so that players like Dame Lillard and Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, whomever, don't have situations where they're looking for opportunities to win but can't find it in the organizations they're in, and thus have to hurt fans' feelings to win by leaving those franchises. Shouldn't be like that. My name is BDF44. Thank y'all for watching. I'm out.